Hey, Patrick.
Hey, what's up, Carl?
Date night?
It is. But not with you.
And Dwayne said, what's your wife going to do while you're out dating?
Hey.
So, guys, how you doing?
Pretty good.
Good?
I'm fantastic.
Pretty good. Things are getting clearer.
I can see more clearly now.
Mm-hmm. Now that the rain is gone.
Now that the rain is gone, and quite literally here in the Northeast, it's beautiful today.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We actually have more stories about good old-fashioned hacking than we do about Russia and Ukraine. However, we are going to start there, right?
Yeah, let's start with one that blends them. The 300,000 volunteer hackers who are coming together to try to pwn Russia.
Exactly. And as we have been talking about, you know, the hacking groups are choosing sides. But it turns out that there's more of them. I think this is what this is saying. There's more of them that are hacking Russia than hacking Ukraine, right?
Yeah. If you look at Hack the Box is a platform that a lot of us use to kind of test our skills, kind of like a rat chewing on a steel bar.
We have the best.
Did you know that they can chew through steel?
Yes, that's why I use that analogy.
Yeah.
So as rats chew on steel bars to sharpen their teeth and wear them down, we go after these boxes on Hack the Box. Great platform. They have 20 live boxes. They're not a sponsor, even though I sound like they are. Yeah. 20 live boxes at any given time, and you can get points to like hack them and go through them. We actually assembled a team and did pretty damn well on it for a while.
You mentioned them in the first episode, I think.
I think so, yeah. So it's fun to do, and kind of lets you practice on things that you might not run into every day. If you look at that, there's Russian hackers on there, but there's a lot of hackers all over the world. There's a lot of people in the US, Canada, UK, India, Japan. They're from all over the place. And if you look at the list I just gave you, most of them are not on Russia's side.
Yeah.
Certainly the Ukrainians aren't. So every hacker in Ukraine is probably hacking against Russia. Some of the hackers in Russia are even hacking against Russia. And so I'm not surprised by this.
There's only 5 nations in the UN that are sort of on the fence, or not on the fence, but voting no. Yeah, voting no. There's a lot more abstainers. There's like 35 abstainers in the latest one, but yeah, there's really only 2, China and Russia, that are voting against, the official finger wagging
that we consider team invade Ukraine. Although China's waffling now because they're
actually today Biden had a call with Xi Jinping, which he kind of, I don't know if he threatened him, but he said, look, man, don't you be giving arms to Russia, or else this is going to get real ugly.
Something to understand. The only country in the world that could last a month with these kinds of sanctions that I can think of is Russia, because they supply a lot of their own food.
It's China.
I know that, but I'm saying Russia's the only country I can think of in the world that could handle these sanctions for more than a month, because they supply their own food, they supply their own gas. China imports half of their food and 80% of their fuel.
Yes, but they have so many resources that sanctions of this kind would be completely survivable by China.
I don't think so.
I think you're back asswards.
You can't eat copper.
I'm just talking about in sheer terms of money and resources.
You can't buy it. You can't buy it. Anyways.
All right. Well, we'll agree to disagree there. I think the point of this story is that the world is coming together to put the smackdown hack-wise on Russia.
And we've seen disruptions. The fact that, we've had stories on this before where we talked about satellites and TV stations being taken over, and there's DDoS is happening. Right. One of the stories we talk about briefly, or maybe we won't, is that Israel, some of their websites have been DDoSed. And so it's going back and forth. But by far the news that's newsworthy is about hackers going towards Russia, not coming out of Russia.
Yeah, yeah. The next one I want to jump into is from udaloop.com, and I believe this is just sort of a opinion piece, a blog post, but we are in the first open source intelligence war, and this is by a guy named Bob Gourley, And he says, a thesis I cannot prove, but I believe. We are witnessing the world's first war where open source intelligence is providing more actionable insights than classified sources. And he says in this war, and I'll just read a few of these, TikTok provided direct evidence of the nature of troop and equipment movements. Commercial imagery showed field deployment locations, field hospitals, then proof of movement to invade. Dating apps provided indications of which military units are being deployed. Twitter gave a platform for highly skilled, deeply experienced open source analysts to provide insights. And then he goes on to talk about cloud-connected smartphones, open source analysts, cybersecurity analysts, and historians. Patrick, you told me kind of take exception to this thesis.
I don't take exception to it. I think it's got some implications beyond what he's saying. So okay. I guess I don't think it goes far enough. The U.S. government usually has the best intel, and that's what he's saying is that's no longer the case. If you look at the casualties in Russia, as far as losses of tanks and troops, the U.S. has been very conservative. They're only counting things they know, which is not a bad idea. Mm-hmm. But the odds are that they're undercounting, and that the Ukrainian totals and the things that we're seeing on social media are higher, because every time you see a smoking tank, it's likely there was a crew in that tank when it went down. When you see a plane go down, it's likely there were people in that plane. And the U.S. military, they don't count things they can't quantify.
Yeah.
And so you really could, if you could absorb all this data, you could probably get a really accurate picture on the ground. And that's what OSINT is. Open source intelligence is very powerful. So I don't disagree. I think that it's even more repercussions. The news outlets sometimes used to have to sniff for crumbs from the White House briefings and the Pentagon briefings. Now, you get a bunch of interns in a room, you scour TikTok, and you just count things.
It's impressive. A lot of my Twitter feed, I've just been super impressed with just seeing the open source intelligence that goes on, where, I'll see a picture posted, and it's literally like, it could be like someone's shoe and a rock and a flower out of the Ukraine, and people will be like, oh, I know exactly where that is. It's here. And they then have satellite references, and they have other picture reference. It's just what the open source community can do nowadays is fantastic to watch. Yeah. Like, they'll see troop movements from a specific angle where you see part of a building, right? And they'll be like, oh, I know exactly what that building is and where they are. And based on the sun, I can tell what time of day they're coming in here. And it's just, it's awesome.
Yeah, because it's become a science. OSINT is something that we use in the hacker community to get intel, to know how to enter an attack, how to go. And so it's very mature. The SANS Institute has an OSINT summit they've started doing, and they've actually started certifications. We have somebody on our staff that's got the OSINT certification that just came out. And it's amazing the tools that are available and the amount of data you can pull. But now we're having a problem with there's too much data. So it's becoming signal to noise is the problem.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting you say that, because back in the World War I, World War II days, right? More World War II, you'd throw up a radio antenna and you could hear all of the signals that had to do with a battle, and you pretty much could decode what was there because everything was pertinent to the battle. And now it's, there's just so much noise, it's impossible to try and whittle it down.
Although this is a story we haven't talked about and we didn't put on our list, but the fourth Russian general has been killed. And supposedly one of the ways they're tracking them is because the Russian secure communication system is not working, and they're using cell towers. And the Ukrainians still control the cell network. And so they're using it to find their high value targets.
All right. I have two before we get off the Russia-Ukraine thing. One is, and I don't know if you guys knew this, but Facebook and Russia no longer play in the same sandbox.
What?
Yeah, I know.
They're unfriended?
Yeah, they unfriended each other. And we don't really know who did it first. I mean, so March 4th, 2022, 7:25 p.m., The Insider reports, businessinsider.com, Facebook pulls all ads in Russia and blocks all Russian advertisers globally. Okay. And also March 22, but this one was published at 7:16 p.m., So this was literally 6 minutes before, or 4 minutes before the other one. Russia blocks Facebook, accusing it of restricting access to Russian media.
I could see Zuckerberg being pissed that they blocked him and then blocking them back immediately.
But here's my question. What are all the Russian trolls going to do if they don't have access to Facebook?
They're gone. So this is funny. The Russian bots are gone from Facebook, and you can tell because there's less stupidity.
Right?
Let's put it that way.
I mean, some of the people I was arguing about probably can't talk anymore because they were bots.
It's an interesting twist in that Russia has always, for the last few, probably 10 years, has used social media as a way of reaching out and causing chaos and causing disinformation and, all that sort of stuff. And Facebook and Twitter have been two of their largest platforms they have entire divisions of people who log into Facebook and amplify whatever it is the Kremlin wants the people to hear. So it's interesting that now Facebook's like, oh well, we'll block them, and you start to see the culture of Facebook change a little bit, or Meta.
Well, and the culture of that's exactly what's going on. And so here's how these bots worked: is that someone would post something that the bots would pick up on as being, oh, this person really needs to be in the Russian disinformation network, the RDN, whatever that is. And so the bot would say, as a comment, hey, I think you and I should get together because check out my profile. I think you'll like what, blah, blah, blah. So that person goes to the profile, and, there's a whole bunch of shocking information that this person has never heard of before. And obviously the source of all truth, and then becomes part of the network. And that's how the bots grow. But those bots aren't working anymore. They're not doing anything.
Yeah.
So somebody posts about, the election fraud or, make America great again, or Trump.
I would assume that government-sanctioned botnets are still operating through VPNs and through other things. When I don't think we'll see them completely off the network until Russia separates from the internet, which could happen.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought.
Yeah, it
seems like such a powerful way for them to reach out and completely cause a lot of chaos. I've been listening actually to a new book. So I don't read a lot of books. I actually listen to them on Audible. But I've been listening to this new book called This Is How They Tell Me the World Ends. And it's by a New York Times reporter, Nicole Perlroth. And it's awesome. It talks about like cyber from pre-9/11 to 2019. And she goes through song and verse on Stuxnet and Russian trolls and how they used Facebook in disinformation and chaos. It's a fascinating read.
How does the world end? Tell us.
I haven't finished it yet. I got an hour left of the book. I'll tell you tomorrow. I'll tell you next week.
Report back in an hour.
A cobalt strike. That's what.
Yeah.
Speaking of
probably.
See what I did there?
Yeah.
Yes. Well done.
Thank you.
So switching gears.
Boop, boop, boop.
What do you want to say about Cobalt Strike?
Fake antivirus update used to deploy Cobalt Strike in Ukraine.
This is horrible. This is like,
first of all,
this is Hansel and Gretel level stuff.
What's Cobalt?
Listen, I have already a vendetta against Cobalt Strike, but
what is Cobalt Strike? Okay. What is Cobalt Strike?
It's a software platform that was built so that you could do pen testing.
Penetration testing.
And it's got a command and control structure. And so it's basically bad guy tools that are, and I'm air quoting now, supposed to be used by the good guys,
and it's pretty
against
much
their own organizations.
Dwayne, did you write this?
Bad guys.
Dwayne,
no.
Do I have to send you to your? Did you write some malware again?
Well, what's funny is that the company used to torture their customers and make them prove they were qualified to use it.
Yeah.
Right.
Like interview their customers and not take their money until they proved, they're not bad guys. But it's everywhere in the bad guy network.
It seems like all the bad guys just use it. Yeah.
It's almost like you just got to say the magic words. The eagle has not landed yet, and then they prove you or something.
Like,
all right. So what's with the fake antivirus update, and what happened? Did Cobalt Strike deploy with it, or was it compromised? What's going on here?
Yeah, so this ends up being a classic phishing campaign.
Okay.
So phishing email sent out to Ukraine government agencies offering ways to increase network security, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
Download this critical patch. And they tried to make it look as legitimate as possible by calling it Bitdefender Windows Update Package, which is mildly goofy.
Because we all know you can't alter the name of a file to say what it doesn't do.
And you know what? That's how I get all of my Microsoft Windows updates is through email from random people.
Yeah, so, isn't that normal?
Yeah, it's perfect. That's perfectly normal. And I believe, if I remember correctly, it was being deployed through a French server, which is now offline. So just know that if you ever receive an email, here again, we talk about this quite a bit, but if you ever receive an email where someone says you should download something to update a particular software.
So I got one of those today.
Did you?
If you get an email from somebody trying to get you to run an executable, then it's typically Russia has your computer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I got one of these today from an agent who spelled agent AGENET. AgeNet.
I've always wanted an AgeNet.
AgeNet. We want to sponsor your ads on Facebook page. We
on
pay.
Facebook.
We have some multinational brands like blah blah blah. We'll pay $1,500 weekly. So if you're interested, I'm not interested.
So I'm going to warn everybody that we're in the age where we're lucky that we're still seeing this with misspellings and stupid typos and things. That's going away. You can't rely on typos and misspellings and misrepresentations and them not knowing our culture to save you in the future. They're going to get better. They're going to get better, and they're going to keep getting better. And so what you have to do every time is say, is this something reasonable? Is this something I want? And eventually, the days of someone randomly reaching across to you in the internet have to end, where you would actually interact with them.
And by the way, I don't care how popular your Facebook page is, nobody's going to pay you $1,500 a week with a random cold call email with a click here if you're interested. Nobody's going to do that.
If it's too good to be true, it's
wait
too good
a second.
to be true.
Do you know what? Coming back to Russia, one of their campaigns from the trolls was actually to rent your Facebook account.
Oh my God.
So they would pay you so
kind of awesome.
They could use your account. And then they would post as you and whatever. And if you were like, whatever, I don't give a shit about, posting on my Facebook page, then yeah, they would rent your account, which is kind of goofy that you would ever do that.
Talk about the worst human beings in the world.
I know, right?
The only thing worse than the Russian troll is somebody who would rent their account to a Russian troll so their grandma gets owned.
Right?
Terrible. So, there's that old phrase that if the product is free, then you're the product.
That's right.
100%.
Yeah. Well, let me see your opinion on this. So I believe that these phishing emails are going to get literally perfect, where they're going to be.
There are some that are really good now. I mean,
exactly.
My team will sit down and look at phishing emails that come in, and we can't tell sometimes.
And sometimes they get lucky, like they literally are mimicking something you were just about to buy. Right. And it's super convenient and the timing is good. One of the first ransomwares I've ever encountered, or malwares that I encountered in it was the 90s. And the reason the woman clicked on the email extension is because they pretended to be their sister. Their email, they basically mimicked their sister's email. And they said, check out these vacation photos. And her sister had just come back from vacation the day before.
Wow.
Which they probably found on Facebook.
And the timing was perfect. And she clicked on them and she infected the whole company.
Dwayne, is that awesome?
That is awesome.
It's not awesome.
That's a good piece of awesome right there.
But if they send out 1 million of these emails, they're gonna hit the right targets. They're gonna hit the right things. So we have to come up with a strategy that's not, they spelled something wrong or it didn't make sense, because it's gonna get so much better. We have to get better at these.
So hold on. I thought one of the main reasons that the spelling is wrong, because listen, nowadays, like, you could sound like a fluent speaker in most languages. But you go for $5, you could go on Fiverr and have somebody write this email for you who is a native speaker. I think one of the reasons they spell things wrong is because they literally are looking for people who don't have attention to that level of detail. And go, oh, okay, I'll click on that. Or, okay, you do need my bank information.
I think that's true with the social engineering where they're trying to get you to interact with them, like the Nigerian prince thing. I don't know that it is with something like this where they're trying to get you to download something.
Really clever.
Yeah, because like if they come up with the right narrative, they're going to get you to click on something.
Right.
We need to just break that habit.
Sure.
I'm not looking forward to this time, because it's super convenient to just click on something you want to look at.
I had the interesting and unfortunate, but interesting experience that a friend of mine who I communicate with on Facebook Messenger quite a lot. That's his choice, communication method. So, and he basically said something like, how busy are you these days? Because he sometimes hires me for little projects. And all I said was, call me. And then he wrote back, he said, I'm in a meeting right now, but I have, and he gave me some details about in context and stuff that we were working with. So I knew it was him, but call me is a really good, quick way to validate somebody. And also before you reply, when you hit reply in an email, take a look at the address. Take a look at the email address. If it's not your brother or your sister, whoever you think sent it, then when you, first of all, you don't want to ask them to call you, but because they won't. But here's the thing: like if they've faked your brother's or your sister's email address, right, and then you reply, call me, it's going to go back to your brother or sister, and they're going to go, what? What is this?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You need to validate who you're dealing with.
A secret handshake.
Before any information gets transferred. So Dwayne and I have worked together for 20 years.
Yeah, 20.
Is it 20? Yeah, it's almost 20 years.
It's been 22.
And
22
so we have
years
a
back.
wealth of ways to authenticate. And when I write an email, a lot of times I'm like, well, how are they going to know that it's me? How are they going to be sure it's me? So I try to add a little bit of detail. I add a little bit of flavor. I add a little bit of stuff that's, hey, I'm just got off the call with, and somebody that Dwayne knows I'm talking to.
Yeah.
Right.
Especially when I want them to check out a link.
And if Patrick says, "Hey, Dwayne, I just read about this really new exploit that's going to burn half the internet down," and if I don't reply with, "Oh my God, that's awesome, Patrick," he goes, "Okay,
I know it's not you.
That wasn't Dwayne."
Or if he says, "How terrible," I'm like, "Who are you and what are you doing with Dwayne?"
On a scale of 1 to awesome, this is an 11. Okay, so all right, so let's talk about Kaspersky and the German government. What happened here?
Kaspersky. First off,
the Germans love the Russians. And wait a minute. It's the opposite of that.
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. So Kaspersky, for those of you who don't know, is a Russian-based antivirus software.
Which is almost an oxymoron.
Oddly enough, this isn't the first time Kaspersky's been in the news for weird stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So in that book I was just telling you about, they actually, Kaspersky was collecting top secret documents from United States government officials. This is probably about 7-8 years ago.
Yeah, I remember that.
And it was anything that had like top secret, etc. in it. And the reason that we found out is because the Israeli cyber army hacked into Kaspersky and could see the documents and went over and actually went to our government and said, "Hey guys, you realize that these are on their networks, big thing came out, etc." And Kaspersky said, whoa, all we were doing was looking for a virus with the word top secret in it. So that's why we had all those documents. We've deleted them all since. It was just caught in our net, right? So it doesn't surprise me that the German government is like, hold on.
Yeah.
Maybe
that's like the maid saying, "I just
was
taking your laptop to clean it downstairs in the lobby."
Yeah,
that's why I had your laptop
to
in my.
Make sure all the data is clean.
Unfortunately, we still have nation states. Nation states still have agendas. There is no way that Russia doesn't exercise its authority over Kaspersky. if I was Russian, I probably wouldn't use an American antivirus.
No. Well, and oddly enough, so they probably, they being in Russia, should probably use a Russian operating system then.
Yeah, they don't have any.
Microsoft is the operating system of choice mostly in Russia. Right?
Linux is mostly maintained in the United States. Yeah, all the people who make the approvals are U.S.
Mm-hmm. And for example, I use Defender on my computer, Microsoft Windows Defender. It's a fantastic tool, does a great job. And here's my reasoning for that. One, it does a great job. Two, if let's say somebody's going to break into my computer over antivirus, well, Microsoft already can get access to my computer because they own the operating system. So
Dwayne, by the way, there's some updates for Bitdefender. I'm going to send them to you in an attachment.
I like those in an email. Can you send that?
Can you wrap them in a Word doc? Yeah. That would be even better.
I'd like to launch them from an Excel macro. If you could send that along, that'd be fantastic.
Well, actually, you saying that you use Bitdefender is now open source intelligence on you.
It is.
Because we're going to publish it on a podcast.
So it's funny you say that. So my identical twin brother, who's also a red team leader here at the organization, his kids listen to this podcast. And what they've started doing on the way in and out of school is taking down all of the information I say about, like, oh, it's cold up here or whatever. And they're like, oh, could we OSINT Uncle Dwayne and find out where he is and what he's running? I'm like, oh my God. You kids have hung around
future
your uncle and your dad too much.
That's our intern program.
Yeah, we're growing them.
Wow. All right. You mentioned the Israeli government, Patrick, in that last story, but there was the day before the Kaspersky thing was reported, there was a website crash, in a suspected cyber attack that happened there. Do you know what happened?
You're talking about in Israel?
Yeah,
Israeli government website crash and suspected cyber attack.
The ministries of health, justice, and other government pages are down. It's DDoS. Somebody's DDoSing them.
Okay.
I don't think they really pinpointed it to who's doing it, but I'm sure Israel is one of the Five Eyes, the five countries, including the United States, Australia, Israel, the UK, that are the closest allies to the United States. So they're collateral. They're on the list, the target list, just like Belarus is a part of the Russian target list.
Right, but if the Five Eyes, from a cyber standpoint, were like a gang of kids that you were looking to pick on, like Israel would be the biggest kid there. Like you would be scared. Like the U.S. might be this tinier kid who knows martial arts and maybe
we have nukes.
You. But
we have nukes.
But no, is the Israelis from a cyber sense are really good at what they do. Like a lot of people have always said to me, "Hey, the U.S. we're the best, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, we're the best." And they're like, "Well, who's number 2?" And I'm like, "Israel." And if you ask me on a different day, I may say they're number 1. I mean, those guys are really good at what they do. So it's good to have them as friends.
Just for the record, I believe Israel has nukes too, though they've never acknowledged that.
Yeah. And, a lot of good nukes do you in a post-World War II kind of almost apocalypse like we're seeing right now.
The rumor is that Israel has ballistic submarines, so they get you if you get them. That's all they want. They just want to make sure they get you if you get them.
Eye for an eye.
That's right.
Leaves everybody blind.
All right. Spectre. What happened with Spectre last week?
I don't know, Mr. Bond. What did happen with Spectre? So this is a story about Intel having potentially a problem, so that the Spectre problem that we're trying to fix with Linux may not be fixable on Intel as fast as we would like, but ARM CPUs don't have that problem.
We talked about Spectre, didn't we, in a previous show?
Yeah, we did. I think we did several shows ago. But just in a very sort of quick brief, like Spectre, and it was also usually coupled with Meltdown, were 2 exploits, specifically chip-based exploits, that gave you the ability to read memory of a process.
That's right.
It. So you could read from a program, or you could read from system memory, where, how dangerous is that? Well, if your password is moving around in system memory, I could read that. If crypto keys were moving around in system memory, I could read that. So That's this level of exploit. Is there's a new variant that might give the ability to read sensitive data. I mean, it still has to be running on your PC. It's not something that can be done, over the internet magically. But if you click on a link that downloads a piece of software, it could read through sensitive
Unless
data.
you have an AMD processor, then apparently you're safe, right?
But running
at the
slow.
moment. Well, or we haven't found it yet.
Yeah.
Well, there's that. There's that too. Take a look at what was it? Some of the Eternal series NSA breach 0-day. Those were around for 7 years and in use before anybody found them.
Well, the way to think of it, every single exploit has been around since that code was really written and released.
Well, that's true. That's true. Like the sudo edit bug, which gave you administrative access to any Linux box. The dirty pipe. I think those have existed for sometimes decades. It's just now we're finding them.
All right. Which one do you want to do next? The SQL and MySQL servers, Ghost Cringe story, or the Ubisoft story?
Let's move into Ghost Cringe.
All right.
I think it's interesting, and I really do want to have a heart-to-heart with SQL administrators.
Which will
SQL
last how long?
SQL administrators, meet me at camera 2.
Yeah.
Right. Let's talk about this.
You're on my list.
Ghost Rat and Cringe Rat and Ghost Cringe are all sort of forms of a malware remote access toolkit.
No, they are not. They're bourbon-based cocktails, and you know it.
Oh, that sounds delicious.
We really need to get basement-dwelling virgins to stop naming things.
Wow. And for those of you listening who don't understand that sentence, that's fine. So what this is we've seen advanced persistent threats attacking different technological infrastructure like Exchange. Exchange got hit hard last year, right, with proxy logon and all sorts of other stuff.
A couple times.
This is them coming back to, access to SQL servers. Now, for those of you who don't know what a SQL server is, all it is a database server by Microsoft. So Microsoft puts out Microsoft SQL. MySQL is put out by
Oracle.
It's put out by Oracle.
It's open source though.
Yeah. It's just those are databases that give you the ability to hold information. You could have a website connected to it, pulling information out of the database, etc. What's interesting about this particular attack is this attack is leveraging some very old exploitable functions in both of these pieces of software. So take, for example, Microsoft SQL Server. Microsoft SQL Server has a function inside of it called XP, which is Extended Stored Procedure, XP underscore command shell, CMD shell. It's a procedure you can run to tell that SQL Server to run whatever operating system command you want. So you can say XP command shell on a SQL server and say, who am I?
That's
and it will come back with
it's super convenient. Not at all an exploitable feature.
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? So you say to yourself, okay, cool, so what? So there's this procedure that anybody who had access to the server could call. My SQL server is not connected to the internet, so I don't care. But the problem is if you have a web server that is making queries in the SQL server, then if you can convince that web server to make that query on your behalf,
and let's be
now
clear,
I have access to the system. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
and the command could be, hey, you know what? Delete all this data.
Yeah. Or it could be, hey,
rename
why don't
those data files. Or
who am I
email
running
them
as?
to me.
Or, yes. Yeah, you could do like you're sitting at the computer as whoever the database server is running as. And I'll tell you right now, it's not hard. Like, this sounds really complicated. For those of you who want to play around with this on your own SQL servers, not on random web servers on the internet, there's a tool.
Nice save.
Does that cover us by the lawyers?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. I don't know. Little Bobby Tables is chomping at the bit here. This goes way beyond Bobby Tables.
You're going to have to post a link to that comic now.
I think we've done that, but okay, I will.
We have. So there is a tool, an open source tool you can download and try called SQL Map. SQL Map, I could point at any website on the internet that takes information about, hey, what language do you want this page in, or a username and password or whatever, and it will test it to see if you can inject SQL commands into that system. So if I type SQL map and then the URL to assist to any site on the internet, and it comes back and says, yes, I can get access to this, at that point, you could have a command prompt on that backend database. It's that easy. It's not a super hard thing to do if these things are enabled. And that's why, and that's why we've always, for years, it's been known that these types of functions should be disabled. So I'm surprised.
Let's be clear. We've done vulnerability assessments. We've done pen tests and red team stuff against companies that know a lot about SQL injection and a lot about mitigation and a lot about what they should and shouldn't do. And they still, the things that Dwayne just mentioned, it's still those little things like, well, yeah, when I type in my username and password, I'm doing all the right things. But the query that finds out what language they're returning for the profile, profile data is really the one. The SQL data that returns which file that you're going to use for your profile picture. That stuff is almost always, it's not always overlooked, but it's often overlooked.
Right. And
so a site that's been hardened against SQL injection can still be very injectable if you know what you're looking for. And even if you don't get the XP shell, there's ways that this toolkit that Dwayne's talking about can find out the names of your tables in your database by waiting to see how long it takes to return. And I know you're excited about this, Dwayne, and I know you love this aspect.
Oh, I love this. It is magical. Like every time you see this, you run this tool, like SQL map, you can run it against a page that literally has one dropdown.
Yeah.
One dropdown that just says, pick a language. That's it. And it will go through and manipulate that query dropdown in a way that says, okay, give me the first letter of the first column of the first table of the database. Is it an A? If it's an A, wait a half a second. No. Is it a B? Wait a half a second. No. Is it a C? It's called blind injection. And then you'll literally see the name of a table type out across the screen, or all the data that exists in the table type out across the screen. Wow. So if you're not using parameterized queries, not protecting the database, somebody may steal your data.
It's tricking the system into, is it this? No. Is it this? And eventually it gets an answer, and so it fills it in one letter at a time.
So what's the take home for anybody who has a SQL or MySQL database on premises?
So the take home
cloud.
The take home here, I think, is the same take home that I think security experts have been saying for a decade now. There are certain procedures that come with these products by default that are turned on that should be reviewed. You should always take a look and see. Like, for example, with XP Command Shell, are you running any procedures on your SQL server that require you to run operating system commands?
It's least privilege applied to the components you enable on any server.
100%.
Least privilege applies to software. You shouldn't have godlike privileges while you're browsing the internet or while you're doing your email. And your application shouldn't have all the bells and whistles turned on unless you need them for the mission.
100%.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. And then above that, if they get turned back on, you should know about it. Because I can't tell you how many red team engagements we've been in the middle of. And XP Command Shell, for example, was turned off. Fantastic. We just turned it back on, and now we have access to the system. Right, and nobody even noticed. So it's it's definitely.
And these are companies that pay people to watch their network.
And it's listen, this is hard. There's a lot of layers to security. There's a lot of things to look at all the time, and you get inundated with a lot of things. But the least privileged things you need to run, absolutely make sure you don't have every function turned on. I think that's great.
And I guess the problem is, since the beginning of time, SQL Server has shipped as a product with all these, like a Swiss Army knife with all the blades out, right?
Convenience.
Because it's convenient. And so if they were to put in a new, patch or whatever that turned them all off, well, then
a lot of
stuff would break, and that's even a bigger problem. So it's really up to you, right? To know what these things do and turn them off if you're not using them.
And that's tough though, because the three of us on this podcast, we know the inner workings of SQL Server and Windows and C# and
we're all developers.
Database providers. Yeah, exactly. So I know what an application doesn't require that, but if I'm just a DBA who installed the SQL Server
Did you
and
just
got it up
insult
and running.
DBAs everywhere? Just a DBA?
I would never do that.
Let me tell you something, Mr. Developer. I have a very important job. Even if I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
I pick things up and I put them down again. No, some DBAs are fantastic. But
I
some of them are
basically have a sign on my door that says no. Any questions?
Right. I got to tell a story. About a very large company that wasn't so large when I visited them many years ago. So I visited a company that had Oracle databases and SQL Server databases. And this was in the early days of SQL Server, like SQL 6.5.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to this company and they had 400 people in an office and they're like, this SQL Server stuff is just unstable. It's not reliable. And I'm like, well, that's not my experience, but okay. And the woman I was talking to was like, I'm a database administrator with Oracle. I've gone to training and stuff like that. And, this SQL stuff is just not reliable. And I'm like, okay, well, let's take a look at what you're seeing. Yeah. And she was talking about like records disappearing and tables disappearing.
Uh-oh.
And I went and looked at it and I said, well, it all looks good.
Everybody's got admin access, right?
Yeah, they had 400 scientists who all had admin access and were using SQL directly, which meant any one of the 400 people could drop a table anytime they wanted.
Wow.
And it's because they were all, scientific. But in Oracle, oh my God, no, nobody could do anything without the admin. You had to ask the admin to do it. But with SQL, they had a secretary as the database administrator, no training. They had, and so it was the Wild West. And that's Microsoft did a really good job of making databases really easy. But to do that, they installed everything by default. Yeah. They made everything wide open by default. And they made it super convenient. And I know I keep hitting that word.
Convenience is the enemy of security. I keep hitting that word.
But it really is the thing. It's if it's convenient, you got to double check it to make sure it's still secure.
Right.
Right. Well, and I think there's got to be better communications between the DBA and developers and what's required and what's not required. Because it's easy for you as the DBA to go, okay, I'll turn on all these functions.
Let's start by not insulting them, Dwayne.
Right. I know. I'm doing my best. Listen, I love DBAs. I was a DBA for many years. I'm in your camp.
All right.
Yeah. Hello, my name is Dwayne, and I
used to be a DBA.
No, it was a DBA. Great.
I haven't touched a database in 10 years.
One more DBA story. More DBA crazy story. I was running a project many years ago. It was probably 94. And I taught this company how to use, the database staff how to be DBAs. I taught them how to write stored procedures. I taught them how to do backups. I taught them the SQL official curriculum as an MCT. Right. And then I took over the development team and I ran 5 developers to run a project, 2 developers in Hong Kong, 3 in the US. And as I was doing the project, they ran into a problem with the database. And, as the developer manager, I walked over and I said, well, here, let me do that. And they wouldn't let me touch the keyboard because I wasn't a DBA.
Wow.
And I'm like, I taught you how to do this.
Wow.
And so I had to tell them what to type. They wouldn't let me type the stored procedure. I had to dictate it to them.
No problems there.
No, not at all. But I managed to get it fixed.
No, I told you to write the where clause first before you wrote the delete from.
But, it's just the way the mindset of, no, you can't touch this.
All right, let's move on to our last story, and I mean that cybersecurity incident, which is in air quotes, at Ubisoft, disrupts operations, forces company-wide password reset. Guys, who is Ubisoft?
Ubisoft puts out the most fantastic games ever. Listen, have any of you heard of Rainbow Six Siege? Assassin's Creed?
I've heard of that.
It's not like they're Blizzard.
I don't even know why that's funny.
Because I'm a World of Warcraft player.
Okay.
Which is open source intelligence about me now.
Hey, World of Warcraft was a bazillion years ago. Ubisoft is still relevant today.
I'm old too.
Oh my god! I can't even.
So Ubisoft's a big gaming house, very popular, very big, and having them have to do a company-wide password reset's a big deal.
They have 117 million active users.
Does that mean every user has to reset their password?
I think it's more of the back end. I don't think the users had to reset, did they?
No. The problem with the users is there's a potential that there was leaks of hashed information, but honestly, I think it's more the back end that needs to be reset. All it did was...
It's really not a bad idea. If you are a Ubisoft user and you use any of their games, it's not a bad idea to change your password right now.
And it's not a bad idea to uninstall Blizzard too. Just throwing that out there.
This is just the rival gaming company.
Yeah.
You know, Dwayne used to be a Blizzard user, but then he couldn't hack it.
But then
so
I grew up and I went over to Ubisoft.
So anytime it's a good policy. If a company gets breached, you want to throw it out. Like if you're cleaning out a garage and you find a shirt and there's mouse droppings on it, you're probably not going to wash the shirt. You're going to get rid of it. It's that kind of like if it might be contaminated, you want to take no chances.
There's mouse droppings on your password. You might want to change it. Got it. Okay, that's solid advice.
Solid.
So it's a big deal. It's an example of them dealing with it in a good way. They went and they made everybody in the company reset their passwords.
I still think they should have dealt with it in the NVIDIA way. Go hack them back.
Yeah, well, that is, who knows? Maybe they did. They just don't want to talk about it.
Maybe they did.
Maybe not.
Hey, Ubisoft, if you want somebody to give you a hand with that, give me a call.
Free software for life? Is that what you're after?
I will bring a whole lot of awesome. A whole lot of awesome.
All right. Well, speaking of a whole lot of awesome, that was that almost hour flew by.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So it was good talking to you guys. I think that's a wrap, and it was a very, very interesting set of topics. What I like is the fact that we're not spending too much time on geopolitics, though that's a very interesting topic.
Yeah, it is.
Maybe for another show.
Maybe. Another time. Thanks. See you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.